Hey everybody, welcome to Ad Victoriam. I'm Caleb, this is Zac.
Hey guys.
And we are reading, praying, journaling, and then talking through the Bible to victory. We're doing it every single weekday. Join us here, wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube. I'm going to get us started today. I started in Colossians chapter 3. And there's just one verse that stuck out to me that I kind of dwelt on for a little bit. Colossians 4, and it's towards the end, and it's in Paul's final, like he usually writes, he starts with a greeting, and then he writes his letter, whatever he needs to say, and then he always kind of has like closing encouragement, and that's where this comes from. And the line that stuck out was, "Devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful." And what stood out to me was that word watchful. And I was like, what does it mean to watch in prayer? Does that mean, I was just like, what does that mean? And so I was literally just thinking about that, dwelling on that, praying a little bit, like, God, give me clarity into this. And that made me think of Psalm 121, which says, "I lift my eyes to you who sit enthroned in heaven. As the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a female slave look to the hand of the mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us his mercy." And at first when I read watchful, I was thinking of like a guard watches. But then as I read that, I was like, oh, watching is similar to worship, but not only worship, but also to waiting for a command or waiting for God to speak to in order that we may obey. And I've always loved this chapter in the Bible. I'll share just a quick testimony of Psalm 121 is when the Lord first gave me the vision for my mountain, which is the nonprofit I started. I was working at a church as a youth pastor, and I kind of got this dream of starting a nonprofit to help people be obedient to the Lord, receive visions from him, dreams, worship, all of that stuff. And I kind of just written it down in my journal, didn't think much of it, except for I was excited about it, but I didn't really know where to go from just writing it down. And I was actually driving to play basketball with my buddy Tony, and it was on the car ride there. It wasn't an especially holy moment, I thought. Like, I didn't feel like I was doing anything different. And I just felt like the Lord was like, quit your job and start this nonprofit. And in that moment, that was like the first time I had received anything quite like that. And in that moment, I wasn't scared. Like, this psalm popped into my head of, watch the throne like a slave watches its master. And my thoughts in that moment were, if you're serving a king or if you're a slave, the king doesn't need to persuade you to do anything. Like, if you're waiting on the king's table, it's a glance, it's a hand motion, refill the cup, bring out the next course, take away the plates. And that's where I wanted to be, like, in my spiritual journey. Was, I don't want the Lord to have to convince me or persuade me, or I don't have to go through a bunch of questions with the Lord. I just want to be able to do it. And so I remember just having that peace in my soul from this psalm. And I remember telling Tony, like, this is what I got on the way here. He's like, you need to do it. And I was like, okay. And so this psalm obviously has like a special place in my heart because it's a big part of my story. But as I was thinking about it today, of, do I actively pray in that way? Like, that was a response to the Lord of let me be quick. But today I was kind of convicted and inspired in the best way possible that my prayer also needs to be watchful, where my eyes are on the throne room of God. And what I was thinking about today was, I don't find the throne room of God in the world around me. The throne room of God is located, yes, in a place spiritually that is apart from me, but the way that I get there is through my heart and through faith and through love and through prayer and through worship, which then brought me to Revelation 4, which is John's vision of heaven. And he says, I looked and I saw that there was a door to heaven, and he goes through it. And when he goes through the door, he sees God's throne surrounded by 24 other thrones where elders are sitting. And in the middle of those 24 thrones is God's throne. And around God's throne are four creatures that he describes like a lion, a man, and I can't remember the other two. But what he says about them is all of them are covered in eyes. And I just thought that was interesting of I'm going from watching prayer to looking to the throne of heaven to God's throne is literally surrounded by eyes, by beings and by creatures, and by angels and by men who are all looking to God's throne. And basically all of Revelation is all of these things looking to God's throne to see what he's going to do next. And the next chapter is we're all watching God, and in God's right hand he holds a scroll with 7 seals, and it says they look throughout heaven and earth for one who is worthy to open the seal. And what stood out to me as I was reading this, in context of everything I've just been talking about of watching the throne, is John says he wept and wept because there was no one to open the scroll. And I was like, am I that in tune with what God is trying to do that I am even not only moved emotion or spiritually, but also emotionally, and then through obedience, that it's like I see what God is trying to do here, and I'm just waiting and praying and watching the throne, anticipating what it is God wants to do in his kingdom and on the earth and in heaven. And so all of that was just very inspiring and convicting, where I was like, man, I need to get my eyes off the things of this world. Like, I need to not be on my phone as much. I need to not play video games as much. I need to not be listening to other people as much. And I need to, and obviously we're human. We have to go about in this life interacting with other people in the world around us. But I was like, I should be waking up earlier. I should be staying up later. I should be finding those opportunities throughout my day where it's like I go just inside myself into my heart and I just watch the throne. And then obviously the ending to chapter 5, or to that section of chapter 5 in Revelation, is the Lamb of God then approaches the throne, and he is the one who is deemed worthy, and he takes his place next to the throne of God. And then it ends with everybody worshiping the Lamb as well as God. And it says that the creatures cry out, "You have made the people on earth a kingdom and priests to serve our God. They reign on the earth." And that kind of my final thought here was, if I am reigning on earth and I am a priest of God, the only way for me to do my duty is if I watch the throne in prayer. The only way for me to anticipate what God is going to do is if I watch the throne. And even as I'm talking about this, it's such a nebulous thing to even explain in words of what does this actually mean. But like when I do it, I know what it means. I know what it means that I'm not just praying my own personal self-centered prayers for God to move in my life, which I think is totally okay. But I think there's another aspect of prayer that is watching and just dwelling in the throne room of God and watching what he is doing and what he wants to do. And through that, I think I know for myself, I worship him and love him more when I just have those moments of, I think of the other song, like "Be still and know that I am God." Like those moments, I know that in my heart, like what they mean to me, but it's really hard to communicate that in human words because it's such a faith-filled spiritual concept. But yeah, that's what I read.
That's really good. That makes me think of, there was a while ago when my understanding of a similar phrase of waiting on the Lord, which I think kind of is very similar, and my understanding shifted one time when I was reading that, and I have always just default interpretation been like wait on the Lord, as in don't do what you're going to do and literally wait until the Lord tells you what to do or gives you whatever. And but then I started thinking about it differently, and I was like, I feel like there's a better understanding of wait on the Lord, because like last episode we talked about Nehemiah. He prayed and then he said, "Therefore I did something." And I'm always like, what if, I feel like every single thing I do shouldn't be a wait on the Lord until I get a big confirmation, or something. I was like, I feel like that's just not how I'm understanding it incorrectly. And so one of the things I thought about was John Bellion. And I was like, I absolutely love John Bellion's music. He's my favorite artist. I went to his concerts and they're the best concerts ever. And then he took a 6-year break from music. But until this last year when he released his album, it was unknown if he was going to make music again. And I knew that he was going to make music. I was like, this guy is too good. And I didn't know what was going on. It wasn't really revealed that he was like tied up in contracts, couldn't make music. But I waited on John Bellion. I waited on him expectantly, waiting for that day that the album was going to drop or a single was going to drop and announce a new album's coming. And I knew it was coming. I was so excited for it, even though there was no confirmation it was coming. He could have been done writing music and I would have just wasted my life waiting for him to make another album. But I was like, I know he's too good. I know he's going to make more music. He's my favorite artist. And I waited on John Bellion, and not in like, all right, John, when's your album coming out? It was, when is it? Oh, it's going to be so good when it does happen. And then the day, like, I think Kid Again was his first song that he dropped, and he's like, a new album's coming. And dude, I was so pumped. I was like, it's happening. And I was like, and that is what the Lord showed me was this is like, I think a way that we can look at waiting on the Lord, which is the watching. I was watching John Bellion. I was checking his Instagram, waiting for a song to drop, and he was producing everybody else's album. I was like, Jonas Brothers album, Tori Kelly album. I was like, come on, dude, your album's right there. And then, so I think that is my understanding of that, where you're just like, you're watching and you're waiting, and not in a, what's taking so long? Come on, I want to go. But this dude's cooking something amazing, and I will give him all the time he deserves because whatever he puts together is going to be so excellent. It's worth the wait. Like, that's the mindset I want. And then just the expectantly, like, the day that album drops, I am listening to it immediately. And I did. And I just think like that was my, like, it shifted my understanding from just like sitting around and waiting. Because I think that's also a lot of times it's, the military joke is like, hurry up and wait. And I've done that a lot with the film industry is the same way on a couple short films I've been on. It's rush, rush, rush. And now we all sit around and wait for whoever needs to get their departments figured out, and then the rest of us will move. But I don't think that's the case with God, where it's like, all right, everyone's just sitting around waiting, like wait for the go ahead to do something. But instead it's oh, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? It's gonna be awesome. How's he gonna fix this? How's he gonna save these people? How's he gonna bless these people? Like, how's he gonna make this happen? How's he gonna make provision happen? And so yeah, that's my like understanding of that. Um but yeah,
It's
I'll
good.
jump into what I read here. So I was in Second Timothy, um, and Second Timothy 2:21. Paul's talking to Timothy about the different kinds of tools that are in a house, utensils and tools and different things, which is obviously another iteration of Paul's. There's different parts of the body, and they all do different things. Um, but this time, I noticed something different where he says, keep yourself pure and you'll be used for honorable work. And I just thought he makes a differentiation between, yes, there's different tools in a house, but you can be a pure, sharp, well crafted tool that is obviously like going to be the first choice to use. And I just thought that was interesting. And then I put down, like, how is that possible? And he puts down, Paul says in the next verse, run away from anything that stimulates youthful lusts. Instead, pursue righteousness, or righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. And so his description of how to stay pure is run away from things that lead you away from purity, run towards things that lock in purity, righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. And, so yeah, I thought that was really cool. And then the next chapter I wanted to read just straight from, this is the NLT translation, because I was just like reading this and I was like, this will confirm that what Paul is saying is still relevant to today, because he says, watch out, these days are coming. And so he says, there will be very difficult days, for people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They'll be unloving, unforgiving, slander others, have no self-control. They'll be cruel, hate what is good. They'll betray their friends, be reckless, puffed up with pride, love pleasure rather than God. They will act religious, but will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from people like that. And I was like, that is a great description of current current culture and people. And I was just like, it's never changed. I know that it's thousands of years ago, but that's just the human existence. It's like, and I just think it's funny that Paul's like, watch out, these days are coming. It's like, yeah, and they came and have never left. We're still living in that time. So I just wrote down, I was like, it's just cool to see that Paul is addressing issues and giving teaching towards things that we are exactly what we're still dealing with and will always be dealing with. People will always, if they are not serving God, they're serving themselves. And what you see out of that, especially when you have a culture serving themselves, it's just all that stuff. No self-control, no forgiveness. And it's just like, that's what it is. So I just thought that was cool that he kind of just laid out exactly what culture looks like. And that just encouraged me to keep kind of going with, oh, and then this other verse in verse 4, he said, a time is coming where people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. They will follow their own desires and look to teachers who tell them whatever their ears want to hear. And I just think that, yeah, just so good. Just so good.
Yeah, it's really good. The being a pure instrument, like something that I've always told myself and have said on other podcasts is, the desire to be a useful tool in God's hand, that I don't want to be blunt or broken or perverted in any way. And that reminds me of, Paul says it so many times in all of his letters, be worthy of him who has called you. And that's what that makes me think of, is of we should be striving to be pure, to be holy, to be righteous, to be peaceful, so that God can use us in effective ways. God doesn't need us, but I think part of our fulfillment as creation and our purpose as creation is to be used by God. And obviously, I think I want to be effective and pure in his hand. And that makes me think even in Revelation, where they're looking around saying, who's worthy? And obviously that job was specifically for Christ. Why he came, why he died, why he resurrected was so that he could fulfill specific heavenly purposes. But we know that God also has other purposes. And I think that is a good vision of heaven, where we see it several times throughout Scripture, where God is looking. He is searching for servants and for people who are pure and upright and righteous so that he can use them. And man, what a nightmare to ever learn that God was looking for someone and he had to pass me over. It's like, I don't think we should be living in fear of that, but I think that should be an inspiration for us to try to be holy as God is holy, and pure as he is pure, and perfect as he is perfect. And it's not legalism. Legalism is about salvation, but I think there is this element of living to a high standard that allows God to use us here on earth. So that's what that made me think of, is just being worthy of the calling.
I want to jump in and just mention one thing. I think there's, in my mind, a negative connotation to the word like used, because obviously you don't want to be used in a regular stance. Being used by people is always like a negative thing, and you never want that, because it's like, oh, we just used you because you were going to pay for the pizza. Thanks for coming, but we don't actually care about you. And like, that's kind of the connotation that comes with that. So I was just thinking when you're saying that, and my best analogy, I guess, is with God using us is like, if you were at a job and there's a really working at your job and there's a really cool either new position or a new client to work with or a new job that comes on or a new task, you want to be, and you're like, that looks awesome. That's so much fun. You want to be the one to do that. Then it's like, use me to do that job because I'm going to have so much fun and it's going to be a blast. And that's, I think, the better understanding of, yes, pick me, like I volunteer. But if you don't have the responsibility and the qualifications or, those things that remain pure in this, that your boss would pass you over. And it's like, oh, I wish I was, I wish I would have been ready for that and been prepared for that. And I think about, I was watching Corridor Digital last week, and they had a guy on who owns the company that produced the secret level videos, and they're so awesome and they're so cool. And he said multiple times, like, jobs came to them and they were like, we will not pass up on this. And even though they should have been passed up on it, and they talked to their team, and he, in one of the situations, passed up on, I think it was like a Warhammer video, and his guys, he's like, hey guys, we passed on it. We're not able to do it. Too short of a deadline, too much work. And all the people were like, what? Call them back right now. We are doing that job. Like, we're all huge fans. We will work overtime. It's like, that's where we want to be, is God comes around is like, can we handle this? And it's like, yes, give it to me, and not like, oh, that's a lot of work. I don't know if I want to do that. I think that's the mindset that we fall into, is like, I don't want to do that. That sounds like a lot of work. I don't want to be used by God. That doesn't sound nice. But on the other side, it's like, pick me. I want to do that job. That's a sweet job. Because I think a lot of times that's a negative view of God, that yes, there's suffering in things, but what is suffering when it's doing for something that you love? Like, just like those guys were like, we will suffer and work overtime without pay because we want to do this video. Like, that's so cool. They were like so hyped.
Can I jump in here? Because I actually think that's the other side of the ditch. I think doing things because they're cool for God doesn't also achieve like what God is looking for in our hearts. I think we should do them because he is like the king, and because he created us, and because he's given us everything that we've ever needed or wanted or desire. And I think you can equally be in as much danger of, on one side, you seeing God like using you and it's not going to be fun and I'm not going to enjoy this. On the other side, it's like, I want to do that because that's cool and I'll enjoy it. And I think there's a middle ground that's like, I will literally do anything that God tells me to do, because we know, like you were just saying, that like sometimes God asks us to do things that we cannot see the joy in or the success in. And I think being counted as worthy means, like for Paul's life was like a wreck. Like, from human standards, yes, he was like excited to preach the gospel to the Gentiles, but he was excited to do that because of who God was and not because of the task necessarily at hand. It's because he was like saved, sanctified, delivered, and all of those things. And the only reason I'm saying this right now is because I feel like I know that for myself and for a lot of people, we can get caught up in looking at jobs and being like, or duties or callings or purpose and all of that stuff, and saying things like, that's below me, or like, that's the one I really want, like, why am I stuck here? And I feel like no matter where you're at in life, no matter what job is assigned to you, if you are secure in that you are serving the king, that you are worthy of the king, that you are loved by the king, that you love the king, that brings that joy and that peace and that comfort, even when we are doing things that we wouldn't choose to do ourselves. And I think there is an element of loving what you do, but I think that comes originally from our obedience to God, not on determining what we'll enjoy doing or not enjoy doing, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. No, I agree with that. But I was just saying, like, I think speaking against the term of like, oh, I don't want to be used by God and like used and thrown away, I guess is
Sure.
what I was.
Sure. And I think that just comes from a not right view of God. I think there's bigger issues there. I get that. That's why I was saying, like, what I was saying is that if people are in that mindset and then they go to the mindset of, well, I'll do the cool jobs because I believe God has something cool for me, you're still missing that seeing God rightly piece.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. That's all I had. Any thoughts? Any more thoughts?
No, I don't think so.
Sweet.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for being around. Subscribe.
See you next time.
We'll see you tomorrow.